Hello, and welcome to the Financial Services Innovation Coalition's video podcast. My name is Brady Buckner, and I'm the president of the Financial Services Innovation Coalition, or FSIC as we call it. FSIC is a network of industry innovators, legislators, community groups, and academics who share a passion for applying emerging technology and market innovation to create a more inclusive economy and advocate for policy that promotes economic empowerment. Today's topic is living with sickle cell disease or sickle cell anemia. And our guest is Teya Smith. Teya is a wonderful person. You're going to love hearing from her today. Her professional experience spans public and media relation to the conception and execution of multimedia advertising and marketing campaigns. And she's worked with FSIC for about a year now and has done some wonderful work preparing for our Minority Policy Summit. So I am delighted to have you here today, and thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us what is sickle cell disease?
Hi, thank you for having me, Brady. I really appreciate the introduction. That was pretty amazing. Thank you. Um, well, I am Teya Smith. I have been working in marketing, public relations, community affairs, and communications for almost 2 decades now, working for Fortune 500 companies, and decided to scale back my time in corporate America and start servicing smaller businesses that mean things to me, progressive businesses, things that impact communities. And that's how I met you. And it's been such a pleasure working with you guys and helping to help brand and push the mission and create greater awareness for what you guys do. It's really important work, and it's a pleasure working with you. So
Thank you.
that's about me, and that's how I got here. About sickle cell, what is blood disease that affects your red blood cells, which are responsible for carrying oxygen. What happens is those red blood cells in sickle cell, while you're having a crisis, red blood cells die off more rapidly and they create congestion for other cells and especially other red blood cells in the vessels and areas that are affected, creating lack of blood flow to other certain areas of the body where there might be congestion of the blood flow or red blood cells, right?
Okay.
Um, so dead red blood cells form a sickle shape. Usually they're donut shaped, round. A healthy cell is round, like a donut with kind of a flatter center, maybe like a disc, but donutty on the edges. And when they are expired, they flatten out like sickles. So they look like little discs, almost like a contact lens, right? So those kind of accumulate in the bloodstream and again create lack of oxygen and circulation and major pain, very intense pain. I can't really explain it, or the best way I can explain it is if your blood maybe had like shards of glass in it and you're like literally, it's very
Ooh,
painful to, yeah, just traveling through your system no matter what you do. You hold your breath, you can kind of get your blood flow to decrease for a while. And these aren't any, you know, recommended tactics by any means, but you're doing anything you can to stop pain, right? So you find yourself clenching up and holding your breath, and then just when you release, you get that rush of flow back. It's just like an attack of pain again. It's very uncomfortable, something that you can't stop, and that you really can't control once it gets to a certain point.
that sounds incredibly painful.
Very
And I can imagine. I hear it like collection of joints and
painful.
and think about how many millions, thousands, if not millions of branches there are in each artery or vein, and that's all of those are getting clogged to some degree. and
Yes.
causing pain. So imagine your entire, well, you don't have to, your
Yeah.
entire body in like a 9 or 10 pain for
Yes.
until you can do something. And people can die from that, right? If they don't, if they have a bad enough attack, can they die
Yes.
or will it cause damage?
Definite damage. So usually when there's a sickle cell crisis, pretty, it's rare that it's general all over the body. Usually it'll affect an area. So for instance, I'll have a crisis in my arm. So my whole arm will be in excruciating pain, pretty much numb. So imagine when you're getting your blood pressure taken and they put the blood pressure cuff on and it's on the highest tightness, as tight as it goes, and they don't release it. So it's that feeling from the inside, like the pressure of a blood pressure cuff, right? So your whole arm goes numb maybe for a couple of days during crisis and then becomes, you can't really use it, not because it's only not in pain, you just really don't have the strength because you have poor circulation in the entire arm. You treat it with pain medicine, right? You treat it with pain medicine, but sickling is still possibly occurring. So that's pretty much, lack of circulation to your arm for multiple days at a time. So once sickling is over, your arm is still very weak and sometimes needs therapy to get the strength back. And I guess we can get to this later, but there are different types of sickle cell. I have SC disease, which I'm very fortunate to have and manage very well because I don't have crises unless I'm riddled with like some sort of infection, like pneumonia, you know, or the
Oh, okay.
RSV that I'm just getting over. And another, I guess, I don't know what to call it for sure, but the side effect, I suppose, of having sickle cell is that you, as a child, I guess it attacks your spleen. And the spleen is an organ that when it's one of the blood filters or one of the filters for your body, and it's a blood filter. And once it's attacked by sickle cell, it dies off, but it's one of the organs that your body absorbs. So it shrivels up and absorbs. So I don't have a spleen. Most people with sickle cell generally don't have a spleen because
Oh,
of that
okay.
reason. So therefore, we're more susceptible to infections. Our immune systems are slightly weakened because of that. So catching things like RSV. Fortunately, I did not really catch COVID until after the peak of it, right? But I was very um, vigilant about it. I did everything that I was told to do. I rarely left the house. Not to say that
So
that's
are you saying that this disease, number one, is not your fault, and when you have an attack, it's really not your fault. It just happens.
yeah, it
Now,
just happens.
being
Yes,
being ill can exacerbate it, but
exacerbates it.
there's
Yes.
nothing you can do about whether you catch RSV or not.
Exactly. Yeah, my defenses are definitely lower than the average, I guess, healthy human being, right? So even, all the way down to stomach viruses, anything that's in the air, it's just I have to I have to protect myself against. So, yeah,
That's got to affect your life. I
it
mean,
does. It definitely does. But again, I have SC, which is, let's say if there are three levels, like sickle cell anemia is pretty severe, like, the anemia aspect is, I think very, iron deficiency and which are is a whole different level of complications. I am kind of in the middle, and not only am I in the middle, I have been fortunate enough to kind of stay out of trouble where
right.
at the sickle cell clinic at Grady, when they do see me maybe once every other year when I check in for care for having crisis bad enough to actually go seek urgent care, they're like, "Oh, we haven't seen you in a while." It's like, well, I try my best to stay out of danger. I remain hydrated. I try not to get too cold. things of that nature. So
And you're like, I'm not doing this because I like you, which I do,
yeah,
but I don't want to see you.
I don't want to see you at all.
Right.
Correct. So yeah.
So I've heard, and it's been said in the news that it's more prevalent among Black Americans. So is this true? And can you tell us why that might be?
Um, I am not 100% sure. I would, if I would have had notes for this, I think I would have a better answer, but I'm going to give you my best shot. And I'm not sure why, but it is definitely a genetic mutation among the African diaspora. So anywhere African people are, anywhere African American, Panama, excuse me,
Well,
Panama.
I was expecting you to lay out a total genomic sequence and tell us why that was. I think that that's a good answer, that
No,
we
yeah,
know that different backgrounds have different genetic
yes,
basics,
yes,
and so it is just genetics. It's not anything, again, anything you did or anything you just, the
exactly. Yep.
unluck of the draw.
Unluck of the draw, and it generally takes two parents with the trait. That's the lower, not lower form, but the lesser form, where it takes two parents with a trait to kind of create um a child with sickle cell SC disease or sickle cell anemia. And again, I have SC. But also to add on to that diaspora story, as history goes, apparently that is a reason, or they found that um, while building the Panama Canal, I believe that they used the indigenous people, the indigenous slaves that were being used, were not being affected by the malaria. And that's because our blood cells will just die off before they have anything to do with malaria. Yeah. So
Whoa.
malaria is, yeah, one of our superpowers. We will generally not, we'll have our blood cells will go into crisis and die off before malaria can even really take hold. So that is definitely just one of our superpowers, I suppose.
Well,
Yeah.
your other superpower is being awesome. I've really enjoyed working with you on our Minority Policy Summit campaign,
Thank
which, by the
you.
way, for everyone out there, is March 20th and 21st in DC at the National Press Club. And this year is year 2025. So if anybody watches this next year, you'll have to go to the next year's Minority Policy Summit.
Yep.
So, all right. So a couple more questions. What can be done? I saw recently a show, a young lady, African American lady, came into the emergency room and was almost like she was having a seizure or something. And the people there thought she was looking for drugs. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. But apparently that happens where someone comes in that's in a full crisis and they're not able to respond appropriately to what the attendants think they should. And therefore they're misdiagnosed and they're in pain a lot longer than they should be. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, from what I understand, and I had that happen to me in a very prominent teaching environment in Atlanta, teaching hospital in Atlanta. And it was in, I guess, a period of my life where I was under a lot of stress. So I was having my first crises in many years and was new to the area. So went to Emory Hospital University. You can bleep that out if you need to. Went there for care because it was close to me. So went to the emergency room, and I was, let's say, level 7 pain. So let's say just a migraine, the worst
Ouch.
migraine in your leg. It was just in my leg though. But a leg is a large area, right? So that's pretty painful. And I was pretty much balled up on the floor. Like I I told them I had sickle cell because I've had it for a long time, right? So I told them what it
Right.
was, and thinking that I would get urgent care because I was in so much pain. I guess they let me sit in the lobby for a long time. And after hours of that and finally making it to the back and telling the woman that was coming around for the customer service survey that I wasn't answering any questions, I was in too much pain. Excuse me, I was in way too much pain to answer any questions. And once they gave me care, again, I think my mother was able to make it all the way from out of town and was like, "Why didn't you care for her?" And someone was honest and said, "Because the doctors are told that when people say they are that they are in for a sickle cell emergency, they're having a sickle cell crisis, that most times they're drug seekers. So usually if you wait them out, they'll leave. And now if you have your serious crisis and you really have sickle cell, that is, the treatment is almost, just makes you want to cry because you just feel like you're definitely not being cared for. But
Right.
in that time of actually going through that, um, I finally found out that the county, let's say hospital, because those generally don't exist anymore, do they? But the county hospital had the best sickle cell clinic in the whole Southeast, and it's Grady Sickle Cell Clinic um, at Grady Hospital. So it's its own urgent care. So it's like it's not special service. It's just a small clinic, kind of in the back of the hospital, maybe 6 to 8 beds, but they only treat sickle cell patients. And in order to get
Oh,
treated there, you have to go through their orientation. You have to meet their primary care provider, get your base levels. They have to get to know you, get to know how often it happens. And so that when you need that urgent care, you go in, you get triaged, they give you a bed within like as soon as they can, and they give you whatever pain meds you can get immediately. So,
that sounds like a much better, and I apologize. My dog noise is the puppies
oh, I
making
didn't hear
noise,
that.
so
I love it.
I'm so sorry.
Hi.
But yeah, I have my home office here, so I I'm glad to hear about the clinic. I'm guessing that that's not common. That
No,
that is a special case. And what state was this in?
this is in Georgia.
Okay,
And
that's what
this is,
I thought you
yeah,
said. And there, of course, is a larger African American or Black American community than in a lot of states, and so I'm
yes.
glad to hear that they have that. However, I wish that more people with sickle cell knew about that, and that's something when we do our training symposiums and our digital equity trainings, I'm going to start mentioning that.
Okay,
I don't
sure.
know if it will matter except for people in that area, but I will certainly. That's something that we can do. We go to poor and minority communities quite often, and the amount or they just never hear these things because no one
Yeah.
comes to talk to them because they don't know how to communicate with them, and so that's a problem when it comes to Black Americans explaining to the medical establishment, hey, there are drug seekers. I understand that, but don't punish us because of that. There should be maybe a test, or, I mean, couldn't they look at your just cells under a microscope and see that you have the
Yes.
dead cells? I mean, I would think that that would be something, but I am not a doctor, so I
Well,
should shut up on that.
not to know, there is a process. So I have done work also to help promote and work with directly because they were helpful in my life was the Sickle Cell Foundation of Georgia. And what they do is they try to keep kind of a database of anybody with sickle cell in Georgia and provide resources. Like, if you're missing work because you're having sickle cell crisis or you're missing school, they have tutoring programs, they have financial aid on a donor basis, but a lot of people do support the foundation and other multiple other resources like parents that are out of work a lot because their children are in crisis a lot. Like imagine being in
Ouch.
crisis
Yeah.
75% of your life. all of the schooling that you miss, all of the just life that you miss, just being doped up, like Percocet, like what they give me, they give the children, morphine, like in the clinic, on a morphine drip because the pain is so intense, right? So how much life you actually miss. So working with them, they advise, and their initiative is to also push testing in the African American community because I think at some point, all babies, when born, I believe, were to be tested for sickle cell. That was one of the tests, I guess, given for newborn babies, but apparently that went away at some point. So there are people just walking around not knowing. And again, do you remember there was a period when there were athletes pretty much falling out of these unknown complications and unknown things, and come to find out they had sickle cell, right? There are things that it's not
Yeah,
that we
that's
can't be
awful.
athletes, but going back to what you said earlier, people walking around not knowing why their joints ache so much, why they think they're having migraines all of the time, that could be sickle cell crisis. And the test to find out if you have sickle cell, I believe is, you can go to any healthier primary care provider to find out, or go to any sickle cell foundation in your area. I'm sure it's pretty easy to
Okay.
Google, but we can definitely create a resource for that. But also to find out, to see blood cells that are sickling, what happens is it's a different blood test needs to be taken because apparently flattened red blood cells and white blood cells, active white blood cells, when you have an infection like a cold or anything, those white blood cells that increase when you have an illness, and red blood cells look the same under a general blood test. So a
Oh
different
my.
blood test is
Okay.
required. I think it's called a CBC differential. Like, okay, now we need to look at all these flat blood cells and see which ones are red, dead red blood cells, and which ones are white blood cells that are actually doing work. So there is a cert test to that you would have to, I believe, ask for unless you have sickle cell to see the difference between the flat blood cells. So
Well, hopefully through advocacy and education, we can get more and more training for particularly emergency room staffs, but
yes,
all doctors to say, that's just a thing. If somebody comes in, African American woman, sometimes a man comes in and is having a crisis, and they think, well, this might be a drug seeker, but we don't care because we're going to do these tests and we're going to find out,
that's
if
right.
that in fact is the case, then we'll act appropriately, as
That's right.
opposed to, yeah, we're just going to wait them out and not caring about this person that's in tremendous pain.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
okay, all right.
And that brings me to actually take a note, and because I had an experience recently because I'm no longer in Georgia, and went to a highly recommended healthcare network, and I went to the one in an African American community, and because I thought that they would be able to, they were familiar with sickle cell and would know what to do, and it's like, no, they just have the average doctor that has, I guess, the balls to work in the hood. I don't know, that really still doesn't really know about what to do. And I feel like, and the nurse at the triage nurse did say, like, I had been sitting there quite longer than anyone else, and it was unusual. So she definitely made a connection with I guess, the back, to get me a bed, and the care was such that I know that they were definitely treating me like a drug seeker, because if you are familiar with sickle cell, you would know that hydration is imperative. At least offer
Mhm.
a cup of water. Even if you don't have a bag of fluid, that's fine. A cup of water. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, it was just like poor care. And I am going to mention that because they have sent me the survey, and I hope to have a meeting with someone. I don't know where to begin. So I'll be looking to you and Kevin for advice on who do I reach out to have a meeting to say, maybe part of your policy, your actual hospital's policy should include, you know, this, that, and the other if
Okay.
someone says they do have sickle cell. Because the triage nurse actually took my blood now that I'm thinking about it. They actually took my blood. So what was that for if you weren't looking at, and maybe they didn't know what to look
All
for,
right.
right? So
So
I need to
before we
actually,
get into that, I want to talk,
yeah.
I want to take a quick pause
Oh
and then
yeah.
we'll be right back. Taya, thank you so much. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Uh, so Taya, you were talking about um, having the disease, going into the emergency room, not being treated and diagnosed and treated properly. So continue on and tell me what what you were going to talk about there.
Oh, it's just a shame, I guess, that with the medical advancements and the actual pharmaceutical system, let's say, that we're still here where I wouldn't imagine I could see in 2017 or 2011 when it happened. We're 2025 and still being treated as a drug seeker with as after you've taken my blood, you know, is pretty
And you told them that you
ridiculous.
have sickle cell
I
and
told
they
them I was
don't
having a sickle
test.
cell crisis. Correct. So I don't know what they took my blood for. They did tell me after, I mean, it was my second RSV test. I had one in urgent care, and I guess this is not relative to the conversation, but and they tested me for RSV, COVID, and I think the flu, and they all came up negative. And then days later, I guess after, I think what happened was they haphazardly gave me what do they give everyone? Antibiotics. And those depleted my system. That's what it was. And I couldn't hold anything down. And that gave me, I was having a crisis just kind of in my head, which is the worst place. So once you get to a four, it's like, okay, either I'm going to be chewing Percocets like Tic Tacs, or you get ahead of the pain sometimes. And
Right.
in your head is where you definitely don't want to be at a pain level 7 and 8, right? So I was trying to be proactive and take care of it. And I just had to suffer for what it was 6 hours in the lobby while sprained ankles went in and came out and, other conditions. And who am I to judge other people's conditions, right? But when
Yeah.
someone says they're
Yeah.
having a sickle cell crisis, there should be at least a protocol. Like if someone says it comes in with a burn, I'm sure there's a protocol, right? There's something that you do immediately for a burn victim. There should be something, that should be considered and ready to go immediately when someone says they're having a sickle cell crisis. And none of that was done. By the time I made it to the back and saw the emergency room doctor, he actually asked me or said, so that he said that, um, or made the statement to me, so you're in for a headache. I was like, no, it's not a headache. It wasn't a headache that I'm in for. I'm dehydrated because of these things. And I had to explain to him. And he threw a catchphrase at me to let me know that he's heard about sickle cell, but clearly didn't understand because he still did not, I mean, there was no bag of fluid, which is immediate, usually immediate, no matter whether you're getting hard drugs or not, because I think he treated me with something like a liquid Advil, which was fine. It was great because I was only at a four. Um, but there was no immediate care, like a blanket. I thought that the hospital was just so poor that they didn't have any blankets. They just put me on a dry bed. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just, it's South Side Chicago. Who knows what's going on, right? And I look out because they have beds also lining the actual rooms, and there are people with blankets. And I'm like, how does a person with with an illness that requires to be kept warm not have a blanket. Like I don't understand how none of this has been considered. So um
I'm so sorry
definitely,
that happened to you.
yeah,
That it's terrible. And you can say on one hand, people are doing the best they can, but you can say on the other, they're medical professionals, and this is not a new disease. It's been around for a long, long time, and it is
yes,
very real. And to not understand that from Southside Chicago, where there's a lot of Black Americans out there, for
absolutely.
them to be in that area and not know, just
Yes. Right.
it's
And the
terrible,
thing
man.
is, I when I was in urgent care to get tested for RSV or, COVID, or just to get the fever off of me, um, I asked her, I said, if it gets bad or if it gets to a point where I'm having sickle cell crises, where should I go? And she definitely said you know, the number one university medical system in the area. And I was shocked to go there, and they did not have um, any protocol for sickle cell. So even when I was leaving, I did ask the nurse, and she said that there's not one in the area.
So the
Okay.
person was trying to give you good advice, and in fact, it just wasn't.
Yes. Well, the nurse, as I was leaving, I did ask her. Well, the urgent care person was trying to give me good advice for sure. And it was not,
Not
they
accurate.
didn't know what to do. It's not accurate. And it does take certain training and awareness for a hospital system to adopt something like that. I do understand. But I watched Grady Healthcare do it. They have an excellent sickle cell care team. And at a certain point, they were actually my primary care provider because I learned from them that, oh no, you need to have your eyes checked, more often than the average person, because specific to SC disease, sickle cell SC, there is a condition where I think it's the retina detaches. So it's called a certain type of blindness that's caused by your retina detaching. So I have to have the back of my eyes checked at least once a year to make sure there are no tears, no damage, things that I learned because of the next level of care that they provide, right?
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic. So it is possible. We just need, as a community service organization, and you're now a part of that, the FSIC network, we need to do a better job of just telling as many people as we can. I mean, we do have the FSIC Health and Wellness Task Force,
oh
and that's one
yes,
of the things that we could do more of. Now, we have done in so not I don't want to say many, but some communities where we've talked a lot about it, but we haven't contacted the medical facilities in that area, and that's something I will add to those programs. But
for sure.
before we go, do you have any closing comments, or if you could say maybe from a policy standpoint, because that's, we're a policy organization, what's something that could be done, if anything, to help the hospitals understand that this is more important than they think it is, and that they need to be better equipped to deal with it.
I would definitely say do more research, have some research, be tapped in, or at least have some research on the ground within your network. If it's university of this, university of that, or whatever network it is, definitely have some good research and understanding of what the disease is, how it impacts people, the people that are impacted by the disease. And then also training, just being able to provide the immediate care of a person that's having sickle cell crisis. If you're drawing blood in triage, which was rare to me, I don't think that's ever happened, besides in the sickle cell clinic, but in a normal ER, I've never really had my blood drawn before. Maybe they were looking for drugs. I don't know. But if you're going to draw blood, there's a certain blood test that can be ran to see, you know, to check hemoglobin levels and things of that nature.
Okay.
So educating the hospitals on how to treat the people, um, more research, in the medical field or just more knowledge, and also community engagement. Like, definitely be engaging with the communities that you're a part of. And if maybe that means providing free sickle cell testing, then so be it. But they should definitely be better engaged with the communities in which they serve, I would say.
Okay.
So
Well, that let's wrap it up, and I'll say thank you so much for being on. I hope we didn't violate any of your um,
um,
private health information or any HIPAA laws. But it's really brave and wonderful of you to come and share your experiences and your opinions and your knowledge on this matter. We will, based on what you said, I think that we will reach out to some of the states we work more in than others. We'll reach out to whatever the state healthcare office or administration is and kind of get them to admit they either are or aren't doing it just because we want them to do more of it. So, and we can
let
reach
me
out
know
to
how
the
I can
sickle
assist,
cell.
please.
Pardon?
I'm sorry. Let me know how I can assist, please.
Absolutely. Like I said, you're part of the FSIC network. I know you may or may not know that, but when you started working with us, and the FSIC network again is a coalition of people that really care about these things, that care about people being involved in the economy, and part of that is being well enough to work. And if you're experiencing, a lack of health care and therefore won't go to the doctor and you're sick often, you're not going to be able to go to work, and that causes a whole nother set of problems. So we really
Yes.
definitely care about this. And so, with that being said, I would like to thank everyone for being with us today. And if you're interested in learning more about FSIC and its initiatives, please go to our website, which is FSI, the word coalition.org. So that's FSIcoalition.org. And I would like to thank all the FSIC network members for their efforts to promote economic justice and social justice. And remember, if minority and poor communities are able to access the modern economy and wealth building tools, the economy will thrive and benefit all Americans. Thank you for listening today.